good an earful what's going on?
Steve constantly just goes on and on about it. I guess maybe some of these things that's just quite correctly communicating the way it ought to have been done. I was sort of thought through the taking with bags and buses and stuff like that.
Telephone call for Clyde Brooks. Telephone call for Clyde Brooks.
Okay, time to start. Okay, let's talk about the tour first. First off, the question I'm sure a lot of people want to know is, what was the deciding factor that made you guys want to have Pink Floyd hit the road again after such a long period without touring as a band?
It seemed like a good idea. We wanted to make a record. I mean, the usual thing we have done is when we make a record is that we do a tour.
The last time that we made a record, we didn't tour because it was a pretty awful period of time for all of us. But we made a record. We thought, touring, yes, sounds like fun.
Yeah, I think, it's actually a very long time since we've done any proper touring, because The Wall was such a sort of static show. It was untourable. And I think it was partly just being reminded of actually touring and playing live could be fun. It sort of generated that sense of, oh yeah, yes, we should do that.
I did do it. I mean, I toured as solo in 1984, and I really had a great time. I mean, it was really good fun.
Was there anything in the back of your minds maybe that said, once you started putting this all together and you knew that you wanted to do the big production as Pink Floyd is known for, that you sort of said, well, wait a minute, maybe we didn't quite have to do this? Did you ever think that once you sort of started getting going?
No, I think you certainly sort of apply thought to the sort of show that you should put on and what would work well. But I think that's really where the sort of main interest lies, really, in putting on the sort of productions that enhance the music. And you tend to get drawn that way. I mean, it's what we've done for a long time, and what I think we feel we've got some expertise at.
We like to do that stuff. You know, the point is that we can do that sort of, you know, we can do a smaller type show anytime we want. I can go and do them as a solo artist or anything. We can do the other types of show more purely based on music. Nick did a little tour of Germany last year, didn't you?
Yeah.
Doing
There's lots of other
things.
people.
There's lots of stuff we can do. This is our forum for doing this type of thing, and it's one of the sorts of things I like to do. Not the only sort of thing, but it's one of the things that we like to do. And when you start doing it, you either make it a moderate show, or you have to go all out. I mean, and things keep coming to us, and people keep saying, listen, there's this option or that option, and you just know that you have to go with the bigger one on all these things, or the best one, and pretty soon your entire budget has disappeared out the window, and you think, Jesus Christ, where's it all going to end? But you can't have half measures, you know. If you're going to do it big, you might as well make it big.
How involved do you get in the planning of all the different effects and what will be there? Do people come to you and say, hey, we've got this brand new toy that we can use here or this, and you say, yeah, I like that one, I don't like that one? How does it work?
It works like that, pretty much, yes. I mean,
I think it does to some extent. It develops into that, but I think hopefully it starts from a slightly more organic base, which was, I mean, in this case it started from an initial stage design that encompassed various particular facilities that we wanted within it, and then you extend that out into something more and more elaborate.
And we started quite a long time ago with getting a stage designer and taking on the lighting man, and from then on we started having general meetings about things, and he started showing us pictures, and after that the other process of people, I mean, I wrote up a list, Nick wrote up a list of things that we wanted to use again that we'd used before, or new things that we wanted to have a go at, you know, have people have a look at. And, you know, you just put a spark into a few people's minds, and they all go away and they come back with lots of stuff. Some of it, you know, you go, oh Jesus, no way, and throw it out. And other stuff you say, fantastic, and we try and incorporate it all in there.
You certainly seem to give the fans their money worth. I mean, if they spend $20 on a ticket, they know they're going to get a show to remember and some, not just one effect. Is that also coming to your thinking, to make sure people really remember this?
I think it's great if you can make people really remember it and have significant moments that people will remember for a long time. And I can't see the point in the long run in cutting corners.
Yeah, there's not much point in, at our advanced age, in going out and doing sort of average shows. I mean, that's really, why bother? I mean, the idea is to go out and do something that is special, that is a bit different.
And in this day and age, right now, actually, it's comparatively recent that that the big types of shows, people who go out on a grand scale, can actually make a profit, even though you spend an awful lot of money. I mean, we are absolutely spending a fortune on putting this thing together, and but we still are not anticipating making a loss on it. So from that point of view, it means we can feel quite good about giving people their money's worth. You know.
Does that surprise you that maybe in days past, tours past, that if you had to do such a big production, it was definitely in the red, and now you can? Things have changed an awful lot in the past few years in terms of the revenues that come in on these things. The ticket prices obviously have gone up, but they haven't really gone up particularly in terms of inflation over years and years and years. But merchandising and stuff like that has gone up by about 1,000% of that the last 6 or 7 years, I think. What is your reaction when you hear that 1.5 million tickets have already been sold for this tour with very little publicity? I mean, with almost no publicity, just the name. Everybody knows. You say Pink Floyd's coming around. It's been 8 years. You know, the lines form and tickets sell in an hour.
They're just so relieved Roger's gone. Didn't even say that.
I think, I suppose really, there's a combination of responses, but to some extent there's a sense of slight alarm at the responsibility, because although it's very nice to sell a mass of tickets, I think disappointing 1.5 million people would be a very, very dangerous thing to do. And so there's an element that says, well, we've got, you know, we know that we've actually got to get something right.
Yeah, puts a little pressure on, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that's that tends to be the way that a band sort of produces better work anyway. That some sort of pressure is required, otherwise nothing ever quite moves to the point of getting done.
What are your opinions on some of the other sort of theatrical major tours that are going around? You guys were one of the pioneers of the big show. I mean, Bowie's out there doing his version, and Madonna's got her little theatrical thing going in the stadiums. What are your opinions when you see some of those shows? Or have you seen any?
I haven't seen many of them. I've seen, I saw about 20 minutes of Bowie's, but I was working. That was here in Toronto.
I saw all the Bowie shows. I thought it was very good, actually. I thought, I mean, there's an enormous amount of room.
Telephone for Rick Wyman. Telephone for Rick Wyman.
Thank you. I think there's an enormous amount of room for that sort of show to be put on. I mean, there are a few artists who really are capable of sort of holding the show in their own right and just being there and doing it. But there are a lot of other people with other skills, and Bowie's, I think, a very good example of someone who actually can utilise different elements and make up. I thought it was a very interesting show. I mean, I enjoyed it.
I quite enjoyed the bit that I was there for, but I have seen a number of other shows in the past year that have really been a bit disappointing. I mean, they have not dealt with the scale of the places they're in at all, I don't think, and I think that's sort of disappointing. Okay. A lot of very flat shows. You know.
Yeah, some people seem to do what you said you shouldn't do, is cut the corners. They they go to a point and then they stop. They say, yeah, we'll be theatrical, and one dancer represents theatrical to them, and you know, you lose it when there's 70,000 people there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they're very big places. You know, you can get cheaper PAs, and you can. There's all sorts of corners you can cut and save yourself a lot of money. But it's kind of it doesn't really work in the long-term thinking approach, I don't think.
A little bit about the sound system, Jens, PA. The sound system that you guys use, that again you were one of the pioneers to use. Tell me about that and how that plays in the show and the effectiveness of that. The sort of
Well, we
The
don't have.
quadraphonic system you're talking about. Yeah.
We used to have a company that we all bought a PA. We had a PA built, but we don't have that anymore. So we are actually have joined the run of the mill in terms of we are renting PAs. But I mean, ours would have been way out of date anyway by now. So these things,
But
the
we're
technology's
utilising-
moved on an awful lot.
We're utilising sort of various odd parts of the mixing console to make the quadraphonic system work.
Still functions
I
like
mean,
the old
it's-
system. We got
yes,
tons.
it's exactly the same as the sort of thing we were doing 15 years ago, really, in style. I mean, it is just a quad panning system. But I think it's quite a useful device I mean, apart from the fact that it can be amusing or interesting or whatever else, it certainly helps in large stadiums to create something that's quite difficult to create, which is a sense that everyone's there to see this show. I mean, the problem with the large,
to be in it.
the large arenas is that it ends up almost like a rock festival, that people are there not really because the band's playing well, they're there because it's, oh wow, we're all here together to see the band sort of thing, and actually they're going to play frisbee most of the time out the back.
Tends to be very one-dimensional. Most people are quite a long way away. The stage is way down there, this little box, and you can just about see what's going on. But anything that you can do to take part of it around the people and out there, so it's becoming more three-dimensional than this thing that's over in a corner. It's a great thing.
what is the material that people are going to be hearing? What is the selection? A lot of new stuff, or are you going back way far?
South Pacific, maybe, Sound of Music.
It's about half and half.
Half and half.
Half and half new and old.
How do you select of the old stuff with so many albums out? I mean, what is your selection process for what you're going to?
Well, we wrote down all the titles from all the albums that there were, that we could think of, that we could remember, and we went down the list and put ticks and crosses against them in terms of our own personal taste,
yeah,
and we gradually came down to a list of things. We sort of had a vague priority on having things that myself or Rick or Nick had writing credits on and stuff like that, but nothing. We haven't issued ourselves with any hard and fast rules or anything.
It's really pieces that are either fun to play live or that work well live. I mean, and hopefully a sort of cross-section over some of the albums.
On the new album, there's a lot of studio musicians, or a lot of guys who are very known for playing studio stuff.
Jane, send. You have a telephone call. Jane, send. Telephone.
Okay. There's a lot of studio musicians on there. What was the reasoning behind gathering up those guys, and how did you come by those particular guys?
Well, we actually have used the studio musicians many times before. We just haven't tended to write out the full credits before. But when you want a specific job to be done, and you're in Los Angeles and Nick's in London and Rick's in Greece or whatever, you just, you get a certain person who's got a certain style that you like, and you say, right, get him in here, and he's in for 3 hours, and he plays a bit of Hammond organ or something, and off he goes again. It's, we didn't sit down and plan on getting people in. There's only like Tony Levin who's on the whole record.
I think it's also quite a nice thing to do to sort of, rather than just bring in a saxophone player and get him to sort of cover every track that you've got ready for the saxophone, to sort of approach tracks in a slightly more specialised way and say, well, perhaps we'll get Scott to do this one, or perhaps we'll ask someone else to do something else, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, Scott was great at doing the Dogs of War, Scott Page, but another guy we tried on that same track he was also a great saxophone player, but he was just wrong for the style of that certain thing. You have to pick and choose people that will fit what you're trying to do.
And I mean, the other thing worth sort of saying is that it gives you the opportunity to do things like, for instance, if you want to run a sort of large sounding band, you can do thing with 2 drummers and have one playing the time, the other playing the fills, and so on. It opens it up. I don't think anything should be restricted to just using 3 men to make a record.
What about some of the new technologies, the sampling and all that stuff? I mean, there's big controversy over that, if that's sort of ripping people off, if the, you know, when you sort of sample someone's riff and lay it in on another album.
I think sampling someone's riff might be ripping them off.
I don't think that's often done. I would have thought sampling tends to be the sampling of sounds. But I mean, I think that you could argue that you own the rights on a sound that you've developed yourself. But basically, once someone's done it themselves, it's an old sound. You know, the interest I think in sampling is the most interesting areas tend to be in making up new samples, making up new sounds, perhaps using the basis of someone else's sound and then developing that by adding other parts to it.
And we found most of the sampling stuff, not all of it, but a lot of the sampling and the stuff like that makes the early stages and what actually is recording, but you could call pre-production or demoing. But these days there's no real difference. But I mean, we used a computer to record MIDI information, and we used that to control sampled drums on an Akai sampler, and it just meant that we could create a very close facsimile of what we were trying to get to very quickly and easily, and then start building it from there. And we generally replaced the drums later and replaced other things later, but I find it amazing. It's great to be able to use all that stuff, because you get very much closer, very much quicker to what you're trying to create.
How about how long did it take you to construct the whole album, as you're saying, piece by piece, and with people in different countries and different parts of the world doing different things?
Well, it wasn't. No, that makes it sound slightly sort of piecemeal. Which that was really towards the end of it. We all got a bit more spread out. But I think the basic
we were about
work,
5 months in England working in the studio, and yeah.
6 or 7 months in
It
England.
was from last September till the end of March, I guess. Yeah, and then we went to LA, basically just to finish up. But of course, when you just go to finish something up, you suddenly discover that you actually need to do quite a lot of it again, yeah, in the normal way.
Is all the material new stuff, or is it stuff that some of it been sitting around for a couple of years here or there?
Most of it is under 2 years old. One bit is actually 10 years old, but. Well, part of it was actually recorded 10 years ago.
What are your writing habits, if you mind me asking? Are you the kind of person who goes for a deadline, you know you're going to do the album, so you sit down and write, or are you always sort of writing? And
no, I stockpile millions and millions of little ideas, and when I'm going to start doing something, I tend to go by myself into a studio and start picking things out of these ghastly little demos, which usually last only about 10 seconds, and tie them together and make sort of improved studio demos, which still don't take very long. They're only sort of an hour or so to put together, but
Did you finish that thought, or do you have more to say about that?
I'll do a tiny bit more.
Okay. Ready? Okay.
Rolling? Yeah. No, and the lyrics are pretty much the same thing, where I jot down in a notebook. I have a little notebook, which I then... Do you like the sound effects? They're testing jet engines outside the wall here. It's great.
Sample it quickly.
Quick. And I then sort of the same with that. I move tiny little bits of lyrics in my notebook and stick them into a word processor and start carrying on from there. So it's usually, sometimes, you know, I mean, occasionally you sit down and you go strum a guitar and the whole thing arrives in one go, but that's not very common.
The video was shot here yesterday, correct? You guys were shooting a music video here?
We got the choruses done yesterday, yes.
Now, is this video going to feature you guys? I mean, a Pink Floyd video we haven't seen you guys in an actual Pink Floyd video. Is this one going to be different than
For
that?
quite a while.
Yeah. Is this going to be, or tell me a little bit about what we're going to be seeing in this video, sort of performance-oriented?
Is it it's not really performance-oriented.
A little bit, a snatch of performance.
You're so impatient, you people. You're so impatient.
We are?
Yes.
Well, we like to know what's going to happen before it happens. I mean, hey, you know.
It's much more fun to wait and see it in all its majesty when it arrives.
Okay, all right.
That's Dave's way of saying we haven't a clue at the moment.
It means it's sort of when it's all there, you say, I like that shot, I like
More or less.
Do you guys like music videos at all? I mean, do you like the aspect of being up there in front and sort of performing to your
Is this
song?
for
What, the
MTV?
truth or?
Is it-
You can
this
speak
we
the truth,
really
even though it's
like
MTV. You can speak the truth.
Shall I go first?
If you like, yes.
I think there are a few videos that I really like that I think sort of transcend the run of the mill and actually enhance the music. The problem with video is that it restricts the viewer's imagination. That suddenly, all they can think about is that image that's presented to them. Having said that, live videos obviously aren't affected by that, but there's something unsatisfactory generally about sort of TV size mega productions live. I mean, the worst ever music video was probably it's all right. It was probably Walt Disney and the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I mean, anyone who's ever seen that will never be able to hear that piece of music again without thinking of those stupid brooms with their buckets of water. And I mean, there's the sort of, that is I think the best example of what I mean. But having said that, I mean, there's a video, the one I particularly like at the moment is the John Lennon, the Imagine one of the passing through the room, through the rooms.
Do you like being in front of the camera? I mean, are you comfortable in front of the camera, or is that
No.
something?
No.
Not very, a bit self-conscious.
Yeah.
I like the Jill Jones one the best this year. I thought it was great. Jill Jones's video, MTV wouldn't play it.
We get like that sometimes.
I know. Terrible. Kept trying to watch to see it, and all I got was bleeding heavy metal over it again. Cinderella and fucking Poison.
Well,
Which
I don't
ought
watch
to be.
those, but that's another story. Another question I want to talk to you about, just a little bit of a different subject, is we're doing this piece on hearing loss and in
Pardon?
rock and roll. And does it ever affect? We know, we've talked to some fans. How about you guys up on the stage after years and in recording studios and all? Has it ever been a problem with either of you?
No.
No, I've had my hearing checked fairly regularly because I was quite interested in whether it was going to drop off. And it seems to be normal.
Mine's fairly normal. It's perfectly good as far as I can tell. I've had it tested. I read a thing that a doctor on this stuff wrote once who said that if you started off in these things when you were very young, like we did, and the levels when we started were not anything like what they were, and gradually over years and years and years the level built up, you actually gain some sort of muscular defense system in the ears that counteracts it. Whether it's true or not, I've no idea, but it certainly makes me feel happy at carrying on.
Has anybody ever complained about you guys, about noise? I mean, either in an outdoor stadium
constantly.
or fans or anything?
No.
Well, people, it's kind of inevitable. A little less these days when PAs are flown up the top, but certainly in the old days when the PAs were stuck on the edge of the stage. I mean, you're trying to make people 200 yards away hear what's going on, and there are people sitting 5 feet away from it, and I can't. I mean, I wouldn't.
I
You
must say,
couldn't pay me enough money to sit down in front of some of those
absolutely.
PAs.
I tend to find the sort of listening levels that other people like in live music extraordinarily high.
Don't look at me.
Speaking of front rows, this show seems to be one of those shows, just from looking at the stage here, that you wouldn't want to be in the front row because you're sort of going to miss the whole overall feeling of it. Where do you think would be the best place to sit? This is trying to get the kids who have the tickets in the back to feel okay.
The drum kit. Sitting there is a great place to watch it from.
Just in front of the mixing desk is actually usually the best place because you're in the best equal position from all the quad stations and stuff like that, and you get a perfect front view. I mean, you're getting it as close there to what the sound man and the lights man are trying to create a perfect thing. That's, if you're as close to their position, is where it's going to be the best, really.
But if you
Thinking of selling
if you
seats
like-
actually in the mixing area this time.
if you like that sort of thing, I think actually probably the front. If you're the sort of person that likes front seats, you probably would quite like the sort of treatment you get. It's a sort of musical mugging, I think.
Don't forget your shades.
Theater of cruelty. If we could talk for a minute about Roger, if that's
I knew this had come up.
well,
You've been dying for it.
just a couple of the quick things.
Okay.
He's on the road performing a lot of the same material, or I don't know if it's the same, but Pink Floyd material.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about that?
Well, anyone can play anything they like. I mean, he's perfectly entitled to play it, isn't he?
Do you feel at all? What are your feelings about playing maybe some of the songs that he has written? You said you were going to try not to,
Whatever Pink Floyd material, it was created by all of us, whatever the writing credit says, there's a lot more to it than that. I feel perfectly comfortable doing, playing things. We haven't as yet had to do anything which I didn't sing originally on the record or anything, so none of it is feeling uncomfortable from that point of view. So no, it feels fine.
Now, fans seem to be responding overwhelmingly to your tour. He's just not doing that well. His album is sort of dropping off, and yet you're both performing Pink Floyd material. What do you see as any reason for that other than?
Well, the reason is that we've all spent, he spent over 20 years, I spent nearly 20 years working on building up the Pink Floyd name. It's, I mean, if you liken it to basic crass sort of advertising, it's, if someone left Coca-Cola and started up his own soft drink company with the same recipe, it wouldn't sell as many. It's just, it's very simple.
Do you ever think you will ever not get back with him, but will be a reconciliation? Are you at all friendly with him? Is there a big gap between you guys and him?
We're not at all friendly, really, at the moment. I mean, it's very difficult to remain on good terms when someone's trying to completely fuck you up, Put bluntly.
I can understand that.
Put that in another way.
How should I put this another way? When someone's trying to screw your life and career up, it's hard to stay friendly on that.
Comments on Dark Side of the Moon. 693 weeks now on the Billboard chart.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever pass that, and it'll probably never drop out. What are your feelings about the album today, if you ever go back and listen to it?
It's a good record, very good. I mean, like I've said countless times, I've never really fully understood what made it that much better, or if it is that much better than a number of other records which were quite sort of momentous in my life or other people's lives. And Sgt. Pepper is what people talk about as the sort of the be-all and end-all of albums, but that hasn't been on the charts for centuries.
Yeah. Do you feel now that it's just one of those things that's just going to perpetuate itself, that people are always going to say, we have to keep it up there, it's one of those things that people like to see going?
I don't think people go in the stores and buy it because they think they've got to keep it in the Billboard charts. No.
It's a wonderful idea. I mean, that people feel obliged to keep this damn ball in the air.
Just write to my mum and tell her to stop wasting her money.
Do you think that was one of the highlights, or is that the highlight of Pink Floyd so far because of that? Or
there's many different ones. I think I prefer Wish You Were Here to that myself. But,
I must say, I think
taste.
one of the things that's we've been very lucky with, as far as the Dark Side of the Moon is concerned, is that it doesn't seem to have inhibited us being able to carry on and bash out other records. I mean, one tends to sort of think of people like Procol Harum and Whiter Shade of Pale, where that really hung around their neck like a millstone for an awful long time. And it was a good band, they've made other records and so on, but that really was the reference point the whole time. I mean, although Dark Side is still on the charts, we don't actually seem to be that bothered. I wasn't meaning by ourselves, but people are interested in the phenomena, but they don't say, oh, well, they've never made a record as good as that since. Because in a way, it's perhaps, I think some of Dark Side of the Moon is historically interesting rather than, totally current.
Speaking of the current groups, who do you sort of look to and when you're listening to stuff, say, well, there's a group that I could see lasting for 20 years, like so many of the bands of your time when you guys started have lasted for a long time. Do you see anybody maybe around today who started in the last couple of years?
Who's talented enough to last 20 years, or whose personalities won't get into such a state that there's no way that they'll stay together?
Well, either one.
I haven't got a clue. I mean, no, I have no idea.
Nobody,
I guess
because it just seems...
you two, possibly, I don't know.
it just seems, looking at it, that there were a number of bands who were starting up in the late 60s, that the mix of the talent and the personalities that were able to keep them fresh for a long time. And, you know, do you see anything like that happening now?
I think Dave's right. You can't really... history has taught us that you can't really tell who might stay together. You can see bands that appear to have enormous longevity, but actually might well not. And also the sort of atmosphere has changed as well. That there was more of the 20 years ago. There was much more of that sort of Beatles type of band put together, which would be four mates who get together and learn to play their instruments, and you know, get on well together, and gradually put something much bigger comes out of that. Whereas now, I think it's become more specialised.
Which is how you two started, pretty much, though, isn't it? And they
Probably. I haven't.
did start that sort of same way, I believe.
But there's more of a tendency these days to have experts. I mean, people are much more musically competent much earlier, and more likely to be, you know, making records on that sort of basis. That tends not to lead to long-lasting bands. If you follow that.
Okay, okay. Question about, let me just do
Anyway, who gives a shit? I mean, nothing.
fans' response to you personally. When you were up there on the stage, and I guess, well, this will be the first time out for a while, but you toured in '84. What do you think the fans' reaction is going to be? You're going to have a lot of 15, 16-year-old girls out there screaming for you? Is that sort of set you back a little bit when you see that happening?
We haven't had that in 20 years. I can't see why it should start now.
Well, a lot of people now are getting a lot of young audiences. A lot of young
Yeah, but I mean, we don't. Come on, that's nonsense.
Actually,
hang on. Let's not let that.
There are a lot of youngish people buying our tickets, I am told.
But not screaming
But I don't
15-year-old
think
girls. We're not in competition with John Bon Jovi. You know, we know that. It's, I mean, it's the nonsense.
Okay, okay. Last question about a completely different subject.
Well, here's a man who may not last much longer.
About high school days. We're just doing a thing. School's starting up again for the kids.
Remember?
If you can remember back, high school days, what were you like
hands of...
in high school? What kind of student would you describe yourself as?
I was
aggressive,
very lazy, and very arrogant. Pretty unpleasant, actually, I should think.
Hasn't changed a bit.
Nick?
Thank Christ I'm not still in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. As a student, God, certainly lazy. I mean, that's definitely sort of
Teacher's
underlying
pet.
memory. No, I don't think so.
What?
No, lazy.
Pinching
I
everyone
really-
else's homework?
I think the problem really is that I never learned how to work until much later on, if ever. I think that's the problem with school. That the difficulty is learning to work and learning to enjoy working and so on. And some kids sort of naturally come to that and everything goes on smoothly. Others they just never are never taught how to enjoy working or how to do it. And I think it was after, you know, when I went to college, I began to get interested in doing work.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. You want to add anything else? Oh, your flying experiences. Are you a big fan?
Nick learned to fly 3 years ago, something like
Yeah.
that? About 3 years ago. And I learned to fly late last year and into this year. We both hold private pilot's licenses, and we like it. We like playing with aeroplanes, yes. The toys get bigger.
Well, actually, the funny thing is there's a sort of link between flying and talking about learning and so on, because you definitely have to apply yourself to, you know, there's a certain element of schoolwork in it, with paperwork and exams and all the rest of it. But, you know, once you see the goal ahead of you and sort of have some reason to get on with it, terrific, no problem, really. I mean, you want to do it.
Is there anything special feeling that you get flying that you maybe can't get anywhere else? I mean, is it a thrill that you can relate to anything else?
There's, you know, there are moments in flying that are just absolutely wonderful. That you know, You can go and, you can get in a little thing with wings, a tiny little thing, and you can go out there and play with a cloud, just fly around it in little circles and dive through the middle of it, which may sound kind of dumb, but it's really quite fun.
It's a combination of sort of magic and science, really. But it can be, it's all of technology and radios and sums and all the rest of it. And the rest of it is.
They let us fly a 747 simulator here last week.
Yeah, probably about the best toy I've ever seen.
So it must have been a lot of fun for the last 3 weeks hanging out here at an airport of all places, and they got the show going with the Navy planes. That's great. They let one of you guys sit in the plane, they said the other day?
I was in a Tornado yesterday, yeah. Didn't go up in it. The engine wasn't very good, and I don't think they'd have let us anyway. But
So it seems like a natural place to rehearse. Sounds good.
It's the best.
Okay, thanks. That's it. Anything else?